everyone, my name is Ned Finn. I've realized that I've forgotten my glasses. Oh god. Hello, everybody. Let me know if the background music, which I'm praying, is accurate. I looked up royalty-free fantasy music on YouTube. I'm hoping that is, like, accurate and that the sound levels are good and everything. I know that my audio is going to sound a little bit distant because I'm away from the microphone, but hello, every peoples. I am Ned Finn. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the stream. Very special bonus stream today where we're going to be talking about these books. We're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm saying Anonymous has said something in chat. Hello, Anonymous. It's good to see you in chat. Anyway, actually, you know, fuck it, I can bring my phone. There's no reason to have it over there. Have it right here. Okay, so, right here, we have 31 hardcover books, plus, five paperback books. This is over 65 pounds of D&D source books. It's a lot of stuff. I tried to organize stuff in a semi-coherent way. Once I get the book introductions out of the way, I'll be actually sitting down at the computer with my mic and all that. But anyway, I just wanted to introduce the full RPG library, as it were. Again, do let me know if the volume of the music needs to be tweaked. Anyway, so we've got 3.5 core rulebooks, Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, Dungeon Master's Guide, Player Resources, got Hero Builder's Guidebook, Tome and Blood, and Defenders of the Faith, which are all resource. There's the paperback. Stuff like Player's Handbook 2, Complete Scoundrel, Complete Scion, Forgotten Realms stuff, Forgotten Realms campaign setting itself, Races of Faerun and Magic of Faerun, 4th edition material, the Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, and DMG for that. Dungeon Master resources, deities and demigods, other like Fiend Folio and Monster Manual 2, Paizo stuff, which these are the big boys, by the way. These are the thick boys. Core rulebook for Pathfinder, Pact Worlds, and core rulebook for Starfinder. This, which I picked up on a whim, like years and years back. This is the Accordlands like setting / rule set, Master Codex, which is like the Player's Handbook plus half the Dungeon Master's Guide, Monsters and Layers, which is basically the Monster Manual, and I don't have the World Atlas. That's the 3rd book. It's like $46 online. I'll probably pick it up eventually. It's not that common, but it also seems the demand for it is not that high, so meh. Yeah, okay, so, Anonymous, I will answer that question. That'll be the first question that I answer. The final, two final piles. Eberron campaign setting, which I have just like a random published adventure from Eberron. The campaign setting itself, Magic of Eberron and Sharn City of Towers. And then, this is the stuff that I'm really looking forward to getting into at some point, is the weird shit. This is like stuff that doesn't fit into any other category. You got Heroes of Horror, Savage Species, probably the weirdest book that I own, Unearthed Arcana, and then Cityscape, which is about like DMing cities, like building like really dense urban environments. Okay, so. Alright, let's... I did not set up my monitor. And then let's switch back to cardioid audio and recenter the camera. By the way, folks, what do you think of the background? I'm going to try not to look at the screen too much, at my own reflection, as it were. I'll take a sip of water because I was just projecting a fair amount. Okay. Let's say, for example, you were going to start... I mean, like, here's the thing. Hopefully, like, if you were to start a D&D game as someone who's a real neophyte, will hopefully be surrounded by other people who know what they're doing, who are going to be able to explain concepts in, like, a succinct way, sort of as they come up. Let's say that you were going to start playing 4th edition, for instance, which is generally a lot more stripped down than 3rd edition or like Pathfinder or something. The reason I'm not talking about 5e, which is the current edition, is I have zero direct experience with it. Have none of the books. I've not played 5e. I've listened to a 5e based podcast, The Adventure Zone, very good series. But like I've not laid eyes on the rules directly, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. Although it does seem like it seems like it's about as easy to get into as D&D has ever been. It's the rule set is more there for facilitating telling stories, which I appreciate. Although I also like the jank sort of hyper specificity of are my glasses fucking crooked? I don't spend that much time looking at my own face. Whatever, it doesn't fucking matter. Anyway, if you're going to be a player, not getting into the, like, not DMing or anything, the only book that you would need for whatever series, for whatever edition you're playing, is the Player's Handbook. That's it. That's all you need. You would want to, like, know what, like how to do skill rolls, how to do attack rolls, how armor class works, that sort of thing. Which are all very, very simple. Like, attack and skill checks both work on basically the exact same way. You roll a d20, you add necessary modifiers, positive and negative, and then you compare it against a target number. And if you hit if you hit at least that number, you succeed. If you don't, you don't. If you roll a natural 20 or a natural 1 on the dice, either something very good happens or something very bad happens. That is the core concept of the game. If you understand that is like 60% of the work right there. For something like 4th edition, it's oh, thank you. I will pass on the compliment. The blue theming is very much taken from our wedding. Our wedding colors were like blue and gold and navy. So anyway, let's see here. The primer to start out with. Yes, absolutely. It's one of those things where, like, if honestly, I'd say the easiest thing to do if you want to, like, start off immediately would be to just be like, to go to your DM or go to a friend who's has more experience, to be like, this is the kind of character I want to play. Like, this is the race I want to play. This is the class I want to play. This is the kind of character that I want to be in terms of, like, capabilities. And then just have them write up a character sheet for you, hand it to you, and then sort of have people explain things as you encounter them. That would be the thing to do, in my opinion. Something like 4th edition, it gets to be very straightforward, mostly because a lot of the classes are structured very similarly. Like, at the beginning of, like, at first level, everyone has, like, 2 at-will abilities, an encounter ability, and a daily ability. It's consistent across the board. Now, what those things are very, can be very varied. Like, a fighter, like, okay, so let's say that you're a cleric, right? Your two dailies, or your two out willpowers might be like Lance of Faith and Righteous Brand. Those are two, like, spells, cleric spells. And then your encounter power, let's say that's Healing Strike, and then your daily is, I don't know, Avenging Flame, or whatever. You know, those are all clerical spells that you would cast in combat, versus if you're a fighter, let's say, Paladin, where's my fighter at? Yeah, let's say that you're playing as a fighter, so your abilities are all, like, attacks. So, you've got, like, Cleave, which is for, like, melee weapons, Sure Strike, which I think can be used with melee and ranged abilities, and then, like, your encounter ability is, let's say, Passing Attack, which, what does that do? I guess it lets you move after you attack, and then your daily is Brute Strike, or whatever. Like, it's, there is a degree of consistency between the character classes in 4th edition that doesn't necessarily exist in something like 3rd edition, where, like, the power levels, honestly, are quite variable. Where, like fighters, or, like, level 1 fighters are probably some of the more potent party members in terms of, like, raw combat, whereas, like, your wizard might have, like, 7 hit points total compared to, like, 12 or 13 on your fighter, and once they run out of their relatively small number of daily spells, which is all you have, like, as a wizard, you prepare your spells ahead of time. You prep them from your spell book, and then once you cast them that day, that's it. Which is why things like scrolls and wands are really important for wizards as you sort of level up, because it gives you lots more magic ammo to go with. But by all means, folks, just because I'm talking, like, feel free to pelt me with questions, and I will answer them to the best of my ability as they come up. Like, I started playing D&D a little bit back in, like, I guess really elementary school. So, like, it's not, if it's something that, like, 12 or 13-year-old me can understand, you're not gonna be, like, in that you know, it's not that difficult to grasp the fundamentals. Yeah, so, like, let's say that you're a fighter in 3rd edition, to answer your question about using abilities, throughout the day. Like, let's say you're a fighter, and you have, you have things called, this is for all characters in general, you have things called feats. Feats, not feats as in your foots. I did have, remember, there was a time when I was introducing someone to the game, and I was like, okay, let me tell you about your feat. And I was like, no, wait, hold on, that came out weird. The fighter's whole thing is they get lots of feats. The feats are basically perks. They're abilities that you can use. Feats do all sorts of things, from just like giving you straight up skill bonuses to a couple of related skills, to being able to competently dual wield, to, like, metamagic feats, which lets you alter the nature of spells that you're casting, or feats that let you do create magical items. And you also have feats that let you do kind of like special kinds of attacks, which is what fighters have a lot of. They get lots and lots of, like, fighting related bonus feats. So let's say you have something like Cleave. With Cleave, if you knock an enemy down, either by killing them or knocking them prone, if you have the Cleave feat, you can hit another adjacent enemy, so you can basically swing right on through. A fighter can do that whenever the fuck they want. As long as they knock a dude down, they can always do that second attack. That is just a function of having Cleave. for wizards and all spellcasters, really, in 3rd edition, and 3rd edition is primarily what I'm going to be talking about. The bulk of my material is either directly 3rd edition related or very similar to 3rd edition. Pathfinder and its spin-off product Starfinder is based on the core of 3.5. Like, Pathfinder is sometimes called D&D 3.75 because it's like an improvement on 3.5. Improvement might be a bit of a definitive statement. It's a continuation of 3.5. It's making changes that the team at Paizo felt was necessary to make it an even better game. Some of which I think are very good, incidentally. But anyway, let me see here. And I will keep getting to questions. So the bulk of my stuff is either directly related to 3.5 or 3.5 like adjacent. So that's primarily what I'm going to be talking about. So with any kind of spellcaster, they have a certain number of spells of each level that they can cast per day. All spellcasters' spells fit into a range somewhere between level 1 and level 9. 9th level spells you get access to at level 17 as a wizard or a cleric, and then sort of other sorcerers get access to them at level 18, and then like minor spellcasting classes like bards, rangers, paladins, they all cast a certain amount. They all get some limited spellcasting ability. Their spell lists top out at like level 3 or level 4. But yeah, so they either prepare them, which is the case for clerics and I think druids and wizards, or they can cast them spontaneously, which is what paladins and rangers and sorcerers and bards do. I think paladins and rangers do. I know sorcerers and bards both cast spells spontaneously, but they have a certain number of spell slots that they can use. So like, okay, so you're a sorcerer, you can cast 3 first-level spells per day, and then 5 0-level spells. And 0-level spells are called cantrips, and they're very minor effects. Small attacks like Acid Splash, minor magical effects like Ghost Sound or Light, which causes an object to glow, stuff like that. Not useless, but not super-duper impactful. Anyway, let's see here. Okay, so, classes. There are, I want to say, 11 character classes, like base character classes. These are the base classes in Pathfinder and D&D 3.5. It got a little wonky in 4th edition because they took out the monk and the bard. Those got added back in with a later supplemental book, but they added in stuff like the warlord and the warlock. And maybe one other class. But anyway, again, if I don't give qualification, I'm talking about 3.5 or its adjacents. Let me see here, because I don't want to forget anything. Getting the player's handbook. This is the oldest, incidentally. This is the first D&D book that I ever owned. And it's in better conditions than some of the other ones. It's not great. Like, you can see it's sort of fraying at the bottom there. But, like, just today, I realized that deities and demigods, like, the whole, like, spine has come loose from the pages. Like, the pages are still sticking together because of the glue, but it's concerning nonetheless. Let's just look at the table of contents. Yeah, so your classes are Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, and Wizard. So I think that's 10 or 11. Those are your core classes. There's lots and lots and lots of prestige classes out there. There's the classes that you can start taking levels in once you hit level 6 or later. And then there are other starting like base classes that got added in later books, like the Complete Warrior introduces the Swashbuckler and... Oh, what was the other one? it's completely escaping me. Oh yeah, the Hexblade and the Swashbuckler, which are both pretty cool, and then the Samurai, which sucks. It is a worse version of the Paladin with no spellcasting. Yes. These books, they are precious to me. And then like Complete Adventurer added in like the Ninja as a starting class, and the Scout and the Spell Thief. There's the Eberron added the Artificer, which I'm a big fan of. So you got options, but like those 11 or so, those are like the core classes. Those are what the majority of people are going to be playing. Like, not everyone's gonna think of like the Swashbuckler as like, oh yeah, that's a classic D&D class, but like everyone knows the Druid. You know, everyone recognizes like the Cleric, or even like the I'd say that like the most out there base class is the Monk, which we're talking like Shaolin monk, not monastic monk. They do kung fu, and they're I don't know. They're one of those classes that's like a lot more narrow in terms of what they can do. Like a wizard, you can be whatever the fuck kind of wizard you want. Same thing with like fighters are very varied. Because you can specialize in a particular type of weapon. You can specialize in a particular type of fighting if you wanted to. If you wanted to be like play as a knight, which is another base class incidentally, but like if you wanted to fulfill that knightly archetype, you could, specialize in like heavy armor and mounted combat. You could fight with a lance if you wanted to. Whereas like the monk is very like there's a set number of weapons that the monk is really allowed to use. If they wear any kind of armor, they lose a bunch of bonuses. Like it's very like there's a specific idea of a class in mind for the monk. Okay, so warlocks. That is a good question. I want to say in 3.5, warlocks were introduced in either the complete mage or the complete arcane, neither of which I own. There's a couple of like sort of really like classic 3.5 books that I'd still really like to get my hands on at some point, and just like really more as a collector. In 4th edition, warlocks are they're considered to be a manipulator class archetype, which is to say that they sort of affect the battlefield itself. Like they're able to like inflict status effects and move enemies around on the battlefield or move allies around on the battlefield, that sort of thing. 4th edition was very, very much interested in the battle grid. Very interested in like how characters move around on the battlefield, and it's good if you've got that. It's just not everyone wants to use a big grid with miniatures and everything, and 4th edition really necessitates that. From what I understand, 5th edition really goes in the opposite direction, where it's like you can use the battle grid if you want, but it's really not important. It's not necessary to the overall process. Yeah, warlocks are not core in 3rd edition. They are core in 4th. And it's just as for a sake of further clarification, I will probably use 3rd edition and 3.5 interchangeably. It's worth mentioning that or at least the vast majority of 3rd edition content is compatible with 3.5 and vice versa. So, like, there's a couple of books that I know are 3rd edition specifically. Like, I'm pretty sure Savage Species is 3rd edition, and Deities and Demigods, I think, makes reference to a couple of 3rd edition related stuff, but it's all pretty much 3.5 stuff. How does leveling work, and is there a level cap on a campaign? Mostly watching from the couch. Gotcha. Yeah, so I'd say across a given campaign, let's say you're starting at level 1. By the end of the campaign, probably get to like level 6 if it's your sort of average length campaign. It depends a lot on like how the DM is feeling. Like, I've had DMs who are very strict about XP, like there are specific XP rewards for defeating this type of combat encounter, that's how I'm going to be. Or people who are much more interested in like, okay, you've accomplished like, you've come to a major storytelling milestone, level up. But yeah, generally, I'd say starting from level 1, it's honestly hard to say. I'd say over the course of a campaign, starting from level 1, assuming it's not super duper long, I would say 6 or 7 is probably like where you're going to top out. And then, like, if you're going by a very strict XP system, you need a lot more, like progressively more and more XP each level, which that's not uncommon. That's how a lot of games work. And leveling is very significant in D&D. It unlocks a bunch of new stuff for everyone. It all, and it depends on what type of class you're playing as. Like if you're a wizard, for instance, it's mostly about unlocking spells. And you also get some bonus feats in the form of like meta magic or item creation feats. If you're playing as a rogue, on the other hand, let me show off. Yeah, so like that is the leveling table for the rogue. It does not look like the camera wants to focus. Kind of. So like your base attack bonus increases every level. Or most levels. You improve some saving throws, which so your saving throws are like your ability to resist certain types of effects. It's fortitude, will, and reflex. Fortitude is against stuff like resisting the cold or poisons. Reflex saves are for like avoiding like physical hazards that you could dodge out of the way of, and then will saves is like mental stuff. So illusions, mind control, that sort of thing. And then for the rogue, like at level 2, they get evasion. Level 3, their sneak attack improves and they get a trap sense. Level 4, they get uncanny dodge. So on and so forth. And then I think... they get a couple of special abilities as well that are like bonus feats. Are there Demogorgons? Yes? I think so. Yes, there are. I had to think, like, what the fuck is a Demogorgon? Yes, I can actually... I think it's in the Monster Manual. It's here. I cannot remember for the life of me what Demogorgons look like. But yeah, they're a thing. Devils, demons, hellcats, imps. Where's my... Am I fucking crazy? I might be, actually. It's been known to happen. To look up. No.
Okay, I think I was thinking of something else. Yeah, no, I'm crazy, because I definitely... All the images that I'm seeing of this weird, like, monkey-headed thing with tentacles for arms is all news to me, so maybe not. I mean, so, what types of different encounters are there besides combat? Honestly, whatever the DM can think of. Like, you could spend an entire, like, a session or two solving a mystery. Or dealing with, at one point in one campaign that I was in, like, we were sent through an extended, like homage to, The Wizard of Oz. Like, you can end up in all kinds of interesting situations, but it really is anything that the DM can come up with. You know, like, you could have, you know, like, you could need to navigate, like, a fancy party and, like, everyone have to bluff their way through to get a particular piece of information, and, you know, everyone's worried about the fighter because their charisma is at, like, a 6, and they have, like, negative modifiers on their bluffing ability as a result. So, like, the rogue has to jump in and be like, no, pardon my friend. He's had one too many drinks, and, you know, kind of, like, talk their way out of it because the fighter's almost about to give away their whole fucking, give away the game. You know, it's really, it really is whatever the mind can conjure. Mind flayers, yes, mind flayers are 110% a thing. Absolutely terrifying, very bad, do not want. Where is it? Oh, I just saw it. Yeah, there he is. Old Cthulhu face himself. Very upsetting to look at. And yeah, they do eat brains. They suck a brain straight out of you. Yeah, you can have, like, most... Combat's a lot of what you're gonna be thinking about, probably, because that's... Like, most of the abilities that the classes get are all very, orientated towards combat. Not as much as, 4th edition. 4th edition is very combat-heavy, because that's where, like, a lot of design meat has gone. Favorite class for me, I like classes that are, that have, like, lots of options. So I like playing rogues, I like playing bards, I like playing wizards, that sort of thing. Like, I'm less interested in something like a paladin, where their whole thing is very rigid. Like, in 4th edition, it's a little bit different. Paladins are dedicated to deities, so there's a little bit more flexibility there. In 3rd edition, paladins are always lawful good. They have to be. That is the ethos that they serve is lawful good through and through. It's, if you want to play that particular type of character, cool, but that's the only type of character that you can play if you're playing as a paladin. But yeah, I like the classes that are more variable, that allow for a more multifaceted approach to problem solving. Like, wizards, like, okay, so sorcerers and wizards are, on the surface, very, very, very similar. They progress at a similar rate. Wizards gain access to higher spell levels a little bit quicker, basically a level ahead of sorcerers. Sorcerers have access to the spell level equal to half their character level, so at 4th level, they start getting access to their earliest 2nd level spells. But the subtle differences between sorcerers and wizards actually make things radically different. Sorcerers cast spells spontaneously from their pool of known spells, which is actually quite limited. Wizards get fewer spells per day, and they have to prepare those spells ahead of time, but they are allowed to learn as many spells as they want, so long as they have them in their spell book. And spells take up a certain number of pages. 0-level spells take up half a page, first-level spells take 1 page, second-level spells take 2 pages, etc., etc. Third-level 3 pages, so on and so forth. So wizards might actually end up having to walk around with multiple spell books. At least, like, that. If I was DMing a campaign and I had a wizard in the party, I wouldn't worry that much about it. As a player, I'm always very much a stickler for detail, so that is the sort of thing that I would track. Like, okay, how many pages do I have left in my 100-page spell book? And like, if I needed another spell book because I ran out of room in the current one, I would, say, I'm gonna go and buy a spell book. Like, I'm subtracting the 100 gold from my, or however much it is. It might not be 100 gold, but whatever. Like, I'm subtracting that amount of gold from my inventory. But yeah, so because of this, like, wizards, they have to be very mindful about what spells they're preparing, but they get access to a lot more options. Like, sorcerers, they kind of have to focus themselves. Like, you can have a couple of utility spells, but it's mostly going to be combat stuff, because you don't want to get caught without that. It's like, oh no, I only have illusions and, like, these other weird spells. Like, I have spider climb and disguise self. Like, well, that's cool, but could you throw fire at this thing? Oh no, I don't know that spell. Whereas wizards, they can be like, okay, so we're going into a dungeon, I'm going to prepare my combat spells, versus we're going to be spending a day in town, I'm going to prepare non-combat related spells, maybe like a magic missile or two, but other than that, I'm going to like do, again, disguise self or charm person, that sort of thing. And that's the sort of character that I like, that can take multiple approaches. Same thing with the rogue. The rogue's big thing, honestly, like, half the reason to take the class is they get so many skill points to put into the huge number of skills that exist in the game. That's one thing that 3.5 should probably be criticized for. Too many skills. It's a lot. The character sheet is honestly kind of overwhelming. If I can get to the goddamn page. Yeah, so these are both pages of the character sheet, of a basic character sheet for 3rd edition. This section right here, all the way down to the bottom of the page, that's all the skills. And these are distinct from, like, abilities or feats. These are things like, fuck it, I'll just list them all off in order. Appraise, balance, bluff, climb, concentrate, craft, and that's stuff like crafting is a profession skill, basically. Craft alchemy is, like, the big useful one, but you also have stuff like craft blacksmithing, craft weaponsmithing, craft armor smithing, craft barrel making. Like, it's the ability to create physical objects in the game, not like potions. Because potion making and alchemy are two different things. Potion making is investing liquids with a spell. Alchemy is creating, like, chemicals, basically, or chemical-related things. So, like, sun rods, which are a type of illumination device, alchemist fire, tanglefoot bag, thunderstones, that sort of thing. It's using physical properties of actual mundane materials to create effects. That's a weird way of putting it, but it's more mundane than potion making. My video feed paused for a moment. So yeah, craft, decipher script, diplomacy, disable device, disguise, escape artist, forgery, gather information, handle animal, heal, hide, intimidate, jump, knowledge, and that's again, it's another variable skill. So knowledge nature, knowledge history, knowledge arcana, knowledge religion. These are all versions of the knowledge skill. You know, it's for being able to recall information on a particular subject. So like if you were trying to figure out like, is this plant poisonous? You'd be like, hey, character who's playing the ranger, could you roll a knowledge nature check? And that's what they would do. And if they get like an 18, they're like, oh, I know exactly what that is. It's super poisonous. Don't touch it. Don't look at it for not longer than 30 seconds. Otherwise your eyes will fall out or whatever. Listen, move silently, open lock, perform, another variable skill. This is for performance abilities. So perform acting, perform storytelling, perform sing, perform various types of musical instruments. That's a big skill for the bard. Ride, search, sense motives, sleight of hand, spellcraft, spot, survival, swim, tumble, use magic device, use rope. Those are all of the skills. I don't even know how many skills that is, but it's a lot. Do rogues have stealth? Rogues can invest skill points into hide and move silently, which are two different skills, which are the sort of stealth abilities. In other, like in 4th edition and even Pathfinder, hide and move silently are both lumped into stealth. Just a solid, straightforward stealth skill. Same thing with spot and search. Spot is the ability to notice things. Search is the ability to find things, if that makes any sense. Those in both 4th edition and Pathfinder is lumped into perception. There's a couple of other things that are like that, but those are like the really egregious ones where it's just like, these feel like overlapping abilities that like spot and search are one thing, but like you're not going to take hide without also probably maintaining the same level of skill points invested in move silently. D&D 3.5 does this weird thing where basically you're allowed to invest a certain number of skill points up to 3 plus your current level. That's the base number of skill points. That's not counting circumstantial bonus, item bonuses, ability bonuses. That's a separate thing. Shall we talk about ability bonuses for a moment? Because that's an important thing. You've got 6 abilities. 6 ability scores. Strength, constitution, dexterity, charisma, wisdom, and intelligence. Each of these can range from like 1 to sort of an infinite, but probably 20. 20 is kind of like the pinnacle of human. Honestly, 18 is really kind of the pinnacle of human ability, but whatever. Each of these grants some sort of a bonus or a negative if it's a really low score. 10 is the baseline. 10 is the human baseline. Your average human commoner is going to have 10s in most, if not all, of their ability scores. For every 2 points above 10, you get a +1 ability modifier. That is a modifier granted by your ability score to things related to that ability. So, for instance, let's say that you have a 14 in dexterity. That will grant a +2 ability modifier to move silently, because it's like you gotta be coordinated to do that. Same thing with negatives. For every 2 like less than 10 kind of start, actually it's hard to say, because like at 10 the bonus is 0, at 11 the bonus is 0, at 9 the bonus is, at 9 the negative, the modifier is -1, and then 12 and 13 is -2, etc., etc., etc. So it's a little bit different, but you get the idea. Or no, I guess 8 and 9. Yeah. So, yeah, 8 and 9 is -1. 7 and 6 is -2, etc. And if you have a 0 in really any of these scores, your character is non-functioning if you have really a 0 in intelligence, charisma, or wisdom. You are some form of comatose. If you are at a 0 in charisma, in constitution, strength, or dexterity, you are physically paralyzed, essentially. And if your constitution is 0, you're just straight fucking dead. Now, there's a difference between having a 0 in a score and not having a score whatsoever. Ghosts, for instance, do not have a constitution score, which is very different. It's basically, they're non-corporeal, so they don't have a constitution. Let's see here. Yeah, so, like, and rogues can also get, like, feats that benefit their stealth. They can get items and stuff. I mean, you could also just, like, quaff a fucking potion of invisibility, at which point you're invisible. Or a spell or whatever, or a cloak. All things are possible. Let's see here. What do druids do, and can you shapeshift? Yes. Druids, they're one of the 4 big spell casting classes. The 4 big spell casting classes are wizards, druids, clerics, and sorcerers. Bards, rangers, and paladins are minor spellcasters. It is part of a greater ability suite. Sorcerers and wizards are the 2 big arcane spellcasters. Clerics and druids are the 2 big divine spellcasters. Druids are less focused on spellcasting than clerics are, but they compensate for that with one, they get an animal companion, which they can improve that over time if memory serves. Yeah, so, like, it's like, first level Druid's Companion is completely typical for its kind, what would that be? Okay, yeah. So at first level, a druid's animal companion can be any of the following: a badger, a camel, a dire rat, a dog, a riding dog. Riding dogs are specially trained dogs ridden by halflings and gnomes, for the record. Mostly halflings. Eagle, hawk, horse, light or heavy, owl, pony, snake, small or medium viper, or a wolf. The wolf is kind of the classic choice, though, right? Like, no one's gonna be like, my animal companion's an owl. I've got a camel as my animal companion, although, like, desert adventure, why not? And then as you level up, you can, like, your animal companion levels up with you. They gain more abilities and stuff. But you can get more powerful animals as you level up instead, which will be at lower level, but their base abilities are greater. So at 4th level, you could have, like, a black bear or an ape or a dire weasel as your companion. At 7th level, you could get a bear or a crocodile. 10th, and that is as an example. You could also get an Elasmosaurus, which is a type of dinosaur. At 10th level, you get something like a dire lion or a mega raptor, again, a type of dinosaur. At 13th level, you could get an elephant. At 16th level, you can get, like, a dire shark or a giant squid or a tyrannosaurus. So speaking of, like, dire sharks and stuff, here's a quick pro tip as a player. If you're a player in a D&D game, don't get on a fucking boat. Stay away from boats. Why? Because there's a whole list of encounters that a DM has access to, that your Dungeon Master has access to, that they will never get to use because they are aquatic encounters. I don't remember if it's the Fiend Folio or the Monster Manual 2. One of them has an entry for a megalodon, like the giant shark. You're not going to be able to throw that into a dungeon. You need to get your characters on a boat. You can throw tritons and mermaids at them. Krakens, which cast spells as sorcerers, incidentally. But anyway, And yes, getting back to the druid question, yes, druids, in addition to their animal companion, druids do get something called wild shape, which there's a prestige class. I have no recollection what it's called, but there's a prestige class that focuses in on the druid's ability to change shape. But yeah, they starting at 5th level, they get access to wild shape, and that's once per day. And then up at level 18, their wild shape ability tops out at 6 times per day. And the things that they can turn into changes over time as well. They get access to more abilities or more things that they can transform into. But yeah, they do get to shapeshift. Hello, Omar King. Good to see you in chat. We're talking about D&D today, as you can probably tell from the logo and the dice along the sideboard here. I like this frame that I designed. I think it's cool. Anyway. Actually, open the lid, shall we? Let's see here. Yeah, you can min-max characters. There's, there's like I once figured out, I rolled up a hypothetical paladin that was focused on mounted combat, because paladins get a special mount that they can summon. And I determined that I could do something like 400 points of damage in a single, attack maximum with like a charging attack from horseback. So yeah, there's absolutely min-maxing possibilities out there, particularly for high levels of specialization, but min-maxing matters a lot less than good thinking. Creative problem solving is generally going to yield better results than just being I have the highest numbers versus okay, for example, my buddy Sam was telling me about a D&D game that she was a part of, where they roll up to this bandit cave, right? And before anyone could get a chance to draw swords, start getting into combat, one of her party members said, "We're the new recruits." And the bandits fucking let them in. Opened up the door. They're like, "Okay, you're the people that we've been waiting for. Cool." Brought them all the way into their camp, deep into the cave system that they were hiding out in, or whatever. And then, they were able to rob them blind. Yeah, you could have a character who's top to bottom, maxed out for combat, but that would be, it's going to be a lot more work, and it's going to put everyone in a lot more danger than just one person coming up with a really clever solution off the top of their heads, of being we're the new employees, we're the people that are coming to be your allies now. And maybe it doesn't work, in which case you fight it out. But if it does work, yeah, there was probably a bluff check or something in there that they succeeded on. So you still need your numbers, but that's one dice roll that was successful versus a bunch of fighting that was avoidable. So I would say you can min-max. Min-maxing is fun. It's fun to have a very specialized character. Prestige classes are a big part of that, but it's just as important, if not way more. In fact, I'm gonna say it's way more important to think about things creatively. That's the biggest, most important thing that you can do, is to be smart. To be smart about how you interface with the world. But and yeah, there's no specific witch class, although there's actually kind of an entry in the Dungeon Master's Guide about creating new custom character classes, where it does talk about creating a custom witch class. So maybe you could even use that. I don't know if it was like future complete. Okay, so roll back. In Dungeons and Dragons, 3rd edition, 4th edition does this really weirdly. In 3rd edition, you can multi-class. You can take levels in multiple classes, which is a really good way of getting a character who's maybe not as powerful as everyone else, but has a lot more utility. A 4th level fighter... A 4th level character has 2 levels as a fighter and 2 levels as a wizard is not going to be as potent in combat, just like simple hand-to-hand martial combat, as a 4th level fighter is. But they, have a whole suite of abilities from being a wizard as well as a fighter that gives them way more options than a fighter does, and that's really what multiclassing is about. The fighter wizard is actually a bad example because armor hampers arcane spellcasting. Whatever. You could say it's a fighter cleric. But yeah, so you can now there's like paladins and monks you're not allowed to multiclass in, as per the rules, but fuck that, which is also what Pathfinder says. Pathfinder does not have any kind of multi-classing restrictions, which I appreciate about it. But anyway, that's not something that I use as a DM. I don't do the multi-class restrictions for monks and paladins, and I don't do the multi-class XP penalty, because I don't tend to... I will get really granular about almost everything. Like, I track my characters, like, carrying weight. I track, to the point where I'm like, okay, so 50 coins of any denomination weigh a pound. So I'm going to track how much weight I'm carrying around in coinage. The one thing I do not get, and I don't do that as a DM. I'm not like, tell me how much your arrows weigh. But I do that as a player. The one thing I am never granular about as a player or as a DM, I don't really care about XP. When it's time to level up, we'll all kind of know, and you'll get to do that. But anyway. So multi-classing, it gives you more options for your character. You can do really interesting combinations. Like once I wanted to basically come up with a character that was the Robert Downey Jr. version of Sherlock Holmes. So I multi-classed as a rogue monk, because monks are really good at hand-to-hand combat, and rogues are good at, there's a bunch of skills that you can put points into that can make you a very effective detective. So prestige classes are a form of advanced multi-classing. Prestige classes are classes that you need to meet certain prerequisites for in order to start taking levels in them. So let me pull an example from the Dungeon Master's Guide, which is the book that introduces multi-classing as a concept. Here we go. So let's say you wanted to be... What's a good thing? The Arcane Archer, for instance. There she is. That's actually... I will answer your question about that anonymous, because I have very strong feelings about this, but I'm going to explain the prestige class thing first. So the Arcane Archer, for instance, is a 10-level class. It doesn't have any more levels in it past the 10th. Where a lot of its abilities are focused around, or a lot of the... I should stop saying abilities, because ability refers to those 6 core traits, but it's such a good generic term. The Arcane Archer is focused mostly around something called Enhance Arrow, which at first level, every non-magical arrow in Arcane Archer knocks and lets flies becomes magical, gaining a +1 enhancement bonus. Okay, so basically, their big thing is that every arrow they fire, every ordinary arrow they fire, is treated as being like magical ammunition. And then they also get like imbue arrow. They have the ability to place an area spell on an arrow. Seeker arrow at 4th level. They can launch an arrow once per day at a target known to her within range, and the arrow travels to the target even around corners. Pretty cool. And then they get like Arrow of Death, Hail Arrows, Phase Arrow. This all sounds fucking great. But you can't start as an arcane archer. You can't start playing the game as an arcane archer. They have requirements. Every prestige class has requirements that you need to fulfill. In the case of the arcane archer, they have to be an elf or half-elf. They have to have a base attack bonus of +6, and they have to have the ability to cast level 1 spells, arcane spells, and they have to have the feats point-blank shot, precise shot, and weapon focus with either a longbow or a shortbow. So basically, this is a character who's probably taken, I guess, at least, 6. So you'd have to be at least you'd have to be hitting your 8th level to start taking levels as an arcane archer, because you'd need to at least take like 6 levels as a fighter and then a level as a wizard to get the arcane spellcasting ability, I guess. But yeah, so that's, and you could also be like take 5 levels as a ranger, or 6 levels as a ranger and then a level as a wizard. But yeah, same thing for like the Arcane Trickster, where you need, you have to have a non-lawful alignment, 7 ranks in Decipher Script, Disable Device, Escape Artist, and Knowledge Arcana. Well, Knowledge Arcana you only need 4 ranks in, but whatever. The ability to cast Mage Hand, and at least 1 arcane spell of 3rd level or higher, and a sneak attack of plus 2d6, which it's a certain level of sneak attack. So basically, you need to be a rogue and have taken levels as a wizard. At least, I guess. These are bad examples because like there's a lot of prestige classes that you can get into once you hit level 6. But these are all like examples of fucking things where like to get sneak attack 2d6, you need to be like a 3rd or 4th level rogue and then hit at least 5th level as a wizard. Bad examples, but you get the idea. And the Dungeon Master's Guide has like 10 or 11. Actually, you know what's a better example? Well, no, I guess that's also 7th level. Fuck it, whatever. It comes with like 10 or 11 prestige classes, giving you some basic stuff, like the Archmage, which is just a really powerful wizard, and the Mystic Thurg, which is custom made for really making it worthwhile to be both an arcane and a divine spellcaster. But the supplemental books, particularly the complete books. So, a complete scoundrel, complete adventurer, complete warrior, complete scion, which is around here somewhere. Unless, yeah, okay, complete scion, complete warrior is over there. Whatever. Between those, there's probably like 125 prestige classes contained for fucking whatever you could want. Like there's some class, like, okay. Let's say you want to be an assassin who assassinates people by being a really potent dancer. There's the Cloaked Dancer, which only has the requirement of hide 5 ranks, perform dance 10 ranks, and sleight of hand 5 ranks. And it's a 5-level class, which is not surprising because I'd be hard pressed to imagine putting more than that into a class that's that specific. what else is in here? That's a bad example because it's so fucking niche. Oh, the Cybond Agent. That's actually really cool. That's focusing on like mind control and shit. Spell Warp Sniper is a cool one. The Uncanny Trickster. There's where is it? There's another one that I really. The Mountebank. Yeah. They get to create. Bluff 8 ranks. That'd be... Yeah, that would put them at 5th level. The Mountebank is focused on, like, deception. Like, they get a number of alter egos as they level up. They get to enhance their sneak attack if they're not already getting a sneak attack. Side slip... you become supernaturally elusive once per day. As an immediate action, you transfer yourself from your current space to another up to 20 feet away. It's cool stuff. I really like the alter ego ability because it's a serious physical change that they get to undergo as per the change or alter self spell. I think change self is more powerful. But anyway. I was asked which I preferred, DMing or playing. I am a pretty competent DM, and I'm comfortable DMing, which is someone who is open to introducing new people to D&D is a really important trait. You need, like, if you want to get people into the game, you need to be willing to DM, and I am. And I've DM'd some campaigns quite successfully, others less so. There was actually one really kind of disastrous campaign, mostly because as a DM, the most important thing to recognize is that the players, at least up to a certain point, have to come first. You gotta put your ego aside. The D&D is not an opportunity for single people to tell a story. It's an opportunity for a bunch of people to tell a story collaboratively. One of the most important things as a DM you can do is to ask, like, what is your character's ultimate goal? And I did that for that campaign, and I didn't, like, follow through on that. And it was... it's a mistake I don't intend to make again. And, like, the immediate campaign after that went much smoother. I would say generally simpler ideas are easier, are better. Oh, you know what? To reset my fucking royalty-free music. Incidentally, the stream has not been taken down yet, so presumably, this music really is royalty-free. But yeah, simpler ideas, I think, are better for DMing purposes, because it gives more flexibility to the players to tell their own stories within a larger one. But I'm a competent DM. I think I'm... Not to toot my own horn, I think I'm a good player. I've been told that I'm a good player that brings a lot to the table in terms of the overall campaign. Like, I think part of it is because of my willingness to do a lot of detail work. Like, one of the most rewarding experiences I actually had was working out, in D&D, was working out, like, the backstory for my character and where he came from, with the DM that was DMing the game at the time. This was a campaign, overall, it was a really good campaign that was marred by, like, two big issues, one at the beginning and one at the end. I might tell that story eventually. We had a party wipe at the end that I think was should not have happened. But anyway, overall, for someone who was DMing for the first time, the campaign overall went really, really well. It was a really good experience. This is the same game where I dropped a bison on someone, for the record. But fuck, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So initially, I started playing as a different character. I was playing as a ranger. And one of the players left because they were sort of booted from the game because they were really having an issue showing up on time. So I took over their character. And eventually someone else joined, and I gave them the ranger because I liked playing the abandoned character, which was a wizard, better. The only detail that was given for this character in terms of backstory was that they came from a place called Vinheim, which is a Dark Souls reference. Once I took over that character, I worked with the DM to like kind of come up with an entire background for what Vinheim is, what the culture is like, where my character fit into things. And it was like this weird, like a very strongly Egyptian themed society, like up to and including their religion was taken wholesale from Egyptian mythology, but like not based in like a desert society. Like it almost had like sort of some Norse flavoring in it as well, to the point that like there was a lot of importance placed on ravens, which were big in Norse society, and like Thoth and Horus were both raven-headed gods in Vinheim mythology, rather than being like a hawk and an ibis. That was a super rewarding experience, and that's the sort of thing that I like doing as a player, is being able to like narrow, like bore down on a specific set of details for one character and really kind of go wild. Because that's what I do as a DM anyway. When I'm designing a setting, I bore in on like specific things, and I need to sort of be like, no, back up, Ned. Focus on the more big picture stuff, because that's what you're in charge of. Whereas like I could, spend probably a week coming up with a really in-depth background for like half the population of just like one small town, where you can't really afford to do that as a DM, especially if you're working on an ongoing adventure. I have a campaign setting and a campaign that I've been tinkering around with for years and years and years in case I ever need one. The basic story is essentially Lord of the Rings. There's an item that needs to be destroyed, and if it doesn't, and it gets reunited with the bad guy, bad things will happen. And it has its own mythology behind it, and it's more complicated than take thing to place to destroy thing. There's like a series of hoops that the players would have to jump through to get this thing destroyed. But with something like that, where I've been working on it for a really, really long time, I can afford to delve into like, okay, what's the precise history of this, like this historical order of dragon slaying dwarves, for instance. What's the deal with this desert society that is based around these subterraneanly fed oases, and that has a real emphasis on psionic abilities or whatever. Now, let's say, for instance, though, let's say that you and four of your closest friends are like, let's D&D together. First of all, do not play 3rd edition. It has its charms, yes. And I've invested a lot of time and like mind space into the content of these books and all of the other books, but generally speaking, 5th edition seems really, really friendly for beginners. But let's say that you're a crazy person and that you want to do 3rd edition, right? Was the longest or hardest campaign I've run? Probably, and I'll get back to my point in a moment. Honestly, the longest campaigns that I've been a part of were the ones that were not ones that I ran. It was, honestly, there were 2 campaigns that basically ran parallel to one another. It was the campaign that we referred to as the Darklands, which was that one that I felt ended poorly, but overall went really well. And then there was a D20 Modern campaign that was DM'd by one of the people who was a player in the other game. Both of those basically ran for like a whole year. or the better part of a year at least, like the better part of a school year. And those were both ongoing at the same time. We met once a week for each campaign, so we were meeting twice in total every week. Ones that I've run haven't gone as long as that. Yeah, I would say that the Darklands campaign was probably like the most challenging campaign that I've been a part of. Because it was a very unforgiving world. It was a world that had basically... there was a lot of Dark Souls inspiration. Like, Dark Souls was very big at the time. Like, I think Dark Souls had released, like, within a couple of years of when we started the campaign. And, like, it was that time period where Dark Souls was very big, where sort of more and more people were realizing, like, this is a really fucking good game. And so, like, there was a strong undead theme to this. This world, the part of the world that we were in was, like, cut off from the rest of the world, and there was a big mystery surrounding that. And there was a lot of combat. That was a big issue early on, was that there were these, like, what we in the people who were playing the game took to referring to as sieges early on, because they were just these grueling combat encounters that did not seem to fucking end. And we were, you know, to the point where the DM eventually, like, realized that was an issue and sort of scaled that back. There's an extended portion of the game where we spent time, like, tracking down a fire elemental across what felt like half the fucking map to get into the one cleric that could send him back home. That was a whole thing. But yeah, I would say that was probably the hardest campaign that I've been a part of personally. Hardest campaign that I've run... The most challenging one was realizing that I'd fucked up in the one that I actually set in Eberron. Which, actually, that reminds me. Let's say that you and your four closest friends have decided we're going to do a D&D thing. I'm going to DM. But you don't want to take the amount of time and effort that it would take to create a campaign setting. Fortunately, there are campaign settings. I have two 3rd edition, like, standard campaign settings, not including the Accord Lands, which is a weird, separate thing. Two published campaign settings. The Forgotten Realms, which is, like, a classic, I think. Like, okay, so, bit of D&D history. When D&D got big, that was 2nd edition, or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which was, like, an expansion of the rules of, like, the first version, the initial publishing of it. And that's when Forgotten Realms was introduced initially, I think. I'm trying to figure out if there's, like, I had a fucking map, like a big fold-out map at one point. It's at the front of the geography section. Well, that's just Farron. Well, anyway, that's Faerun, which is, like, the big... that's the, mainly where it's set. Like, it's... The Forgotten Realms pretty closely parallels the Earth. It's suiting that the most difficult campaign was inspired by Dark Souls. Yeah. And then there's this one, which is actually the first campaign setting that I ever picked up. The Eberron campaign setting, which I mentioned in another stream. This one, helpfully, has the world map at the front of the book. Including Corvair, this continent right here, is the big one. in terms of like where this book is mostly set. But you know, either of these books includes like whatever you could want to know about these worlds that it's set in. You know, you got that's just another map of the same thing. You know, you've got stuff like information about the different races that live there, and sort of like where they fit into the greater society. You've got specific feats that are specific to the setting, prestige classes that are specific to the setting. Magic, life in Faerun. So you got like the seasons, how time is kept, even like a section on like the different types of written scripts. And like the biggest section of the book is all about geography. All the different sorts of places that you could want to go on the continent of Faerun. Same thing with Eberron campaign setting. It's mostly about just like describing the places of the world, because that's what you want. You want to know, okay, like I want to send my characters to, let's say, what's this? Breland. What's the biggest city in Breland? Okay, it's Sharn, and the capital of Roat, which is W-R-O-A-T. Or I want to send them to the Demon Wastes, for instance, which is right there. Ooh, spooky. What is the toughest enemy or enemy types? But anyway, my basic point is that campaign settings are really useful resources. For you know, for just giving you a really fleshed out world that was done by professional people. Campaign enders, I mean, honestly, that depends on what level you're facing things at. Like if a group of, what's a good example? Yeah, if a group of level 5 characters went up against a basilisk, or level 1 characters went up against a basilisk, for instance, they would probably all fucking die. Because a basilisk is like a challenge rating 5, which means a party of 4 5-level characters would be needed to take it on. But in terms of like really, really powerful enemies, dragons, for one, dragons are very, very potent. Certain very powerful types of demons and devils. There are angels that can be fought against. They're also very powerful. Probably like the single most formidable creature mentioned in this book, the Monster Manual, is probably the Tarrasque. Which is essentially a kaiju. Like, if you want your characters to go up against Godzilla, essentially, just put them up against the Tarrasque. Yeah, there he is. There's the Tarrasque. They can, you know, got a frightful presence, improved grab, rush, swallow, hole. It has a carapace. The Tarrasque's armor, like carapace, is exceptionally tough and highly reflective, deflecting all rays, lines, cones, and even magic missile spells. Rays, lines, and cones are different shapes of attack spells. There's a 30% chance of reflecting any such effect back at the caster, otherwise it is merely negated. Check for reflection before rolling to overcome the creature's spell resistance. And it regenerates. Hello, Samantha. I'm talking about D&D today. And hello, Richie Campos. Good to see you in chat as well. We're talking about Dungeons & Dragons today. And we're actually, because this was a bonus stream We started it at 2 rather than 3:30, like we normally do. We will be back. Sam and I will be back tomorrow with more Don't Starve, by the by, at 3:30. As per usual, but we've got like 30 minutes left on... No, today isn't Tuesday, is it? No, it's Wednesday. You had me worried for a moment. Get a better calendar, Richie Campos. Anyway, the most intimidating thing about the Tarask is its regeneration. No form of attack deals lethal damage to the Tarask. The Tarask regenerates even if it fails saving throws against a disintegrate spell or a death effect. If the Tarask fails its save against a spell or effect that would kill it instantly, such as those mentioned above, the spell effect instead deals non-lethal damage equals to the creature's full normal hit points plus 10, or 868 hit points. The Tarask is immune to effects that produce incurable or bleeding wounds, such as Mummy Rot, a sword with the wounding special ability, or a Clay Golem's Cursed Wound ability. The Tarask can be slain only by raising its non-lethal damage total to its full normal hit points plus 10 and using a Wish or Miracle spell to keep it dead. Tarask loses a limb or a body part, the lost portion regrows in 1d6 minutes. The attached piece dies and decays normally. The creature can reattach a severed member instantly by holding it to the stump. That's not actually that uncommon. Ogre mages can do the same thing. Yeah, well, I mean, I appreciate you showing up. I truly, truly do. And by the way, to everyone, feel free to pelt me with questions for the next 30 minutes, and I will try to answer all those that I can. But yeah, so the Tarask is a potent boy, and like the Wish or Miracle spell to keep it dead, even then, that effect only lasts as long as the caster of that spell is still alive. So when old Theobald the Wise dies at a ripe old age of 60 because of the plague or whatever, the miracle spell that he cast to keep the Tarask dead wears off, and the Tarask reemerges to terrorize the world. Now, you don't need to include the Tarask in your adventure if you don't want to, but you can. But yeah, in terms of like stuff that'll inspire terror across the land, Baylors and Pit Fiends, those are a demon and a devil respectively, or possibly the other way around. Those are both very dangerous. I mean, I'm talking about Dungeons and Dragons, Richie Campos, which is it's a game. It is a game of fantasy and imagination, but it is in many it has a more authentic feel than your typical video game, because you're dealing with with your friends who are embodying characters that can react and interact in real time based on what all the human mind can conjure. So make of that what you will. I mean, succubi can be pretty potent. Because they're shapeshifters, and they can drain your levels, so be warned of that. Yes, what is up, Sam? No. Dungeons. I mean, they're Richie Campos. There are versions of Dungeons and Dragons that have been brought over to PC at various points, like in terms of like adaptations. Neverwinter Nights and its sequel are good examples. Baldur's Gate. You also have stuff that's heavily inspired by it. So stuff like I think the Divinity series and Pillars of Eternity, but I am specifically talking about the version that is played on tabletop with actual dice, referencing stuff in books. Or, I mean, you could also have you could, find stuff on wikis and play over Skype or whatever, but it's still, I'm talking about something that is not, like, on a PC in the sense that, like, Skyrim is on PC. Yes, okay, Sam, I will do that. Oh, in this book specifically, that would be the Monster Manual, which is just under just shy of 320 pages. But for really the full experience for players and Dungeon Masters like Dungeon Masters, the person who is running the game, you also need the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook. To play the game as like a regular participant, you need this book at minimum. And this is all 3rd edition. The contemporary version is 5th edition, but I don't have those books. So this is also just shy of 320 pages, and the Dungeon Master's Guide, which I would imagine is a similar page count. Yeah, just at 320 pages. So that's a little under 1,000 pages of material, but this is a fun reveal. If you really want the complete experience, you're going to want a lot more books. I weighed my books earlier today, and I have a total of over 65 pounds of RPG books over there. Not all of them are 3rd edition, but the glut of them are. No, Roblox is beyond. I am an old, decrepit man, and Roblox is young people shit. And yeah, Sam, I will ask about that tomorrow. Does Ned the DM put super evil hoops or obstacles for the player? I try not to. The DM should not look at them as their role as someone who's going to kill the players. They need to be the person who is going to challenge the players. And I think that's a much more important approach to take. So that they feel like they're going up against legitimate obstacles, but not, and obviously, if you set up a situation where it's like, no, that's Ogre Pass. That's the mountain pass that is full of fucking ogres. And a bunch of level 1 characters be like, screw you, we're going in anyway. And, like, at that point, you're not going to be like, you don't find any ogres that day. It's like, no, you face an ogre. If the players are like, we should hightail it out of here, you could probably give them the chance to run off. But, I'm not the sort of person who's going to, like, completely pull punches, particularly if people are doing stuff that's just plain stupid. But I'm not one to try to put, like, super duper challenges in front of them. I want to give them a good, honest test of their abilities without, like, being absurd. Let's see here. Yes, actually, a lot of these books that I have, a lot of them have this little blue sticker that is courtesy of Ed McKay, which is a used bookstore around where I grew up, and I got a lot of these books from there. And they were generally, like, all half whatever they would have cost originally, so I picked up a lot of those books for, like, $20 and $15, which is important. But now these I all bought full price from Barnes & Noble, which would have been like fucking 30. Yeah, all these would have been $30. So that's almost $100 of books right there. Let's see here. I mean, you could do that, Sam. That's always an option. What do you mean, Richie Campos? Why don't you donations on? So current edition is 5th edition. Again, not super familiar. I'd say if there was if there's a single expression that I would use to describe 3rd edition, it's maximalist design. There seems to be a real paranoia with, like, what happens if the players encounter something that we don't have rules for. So let's try to come up with, like, a system that has very specific bespoke rules for everything. 4th edition is very focused on combat. It's good combat. It's a very good combat game. But I think for someone who likes at least having, like, a lot of rules about the non-combat stuff, it's like... So I read off all the skills for 3rd edition. Let me read off the skills that 4th edition has. This should be it. Okay, here are all the skills in 4th edition. Acrobatics, Arcana, Athletics, Bluff, Diplomacy, Dungeoneering, Endurance, Heal, History, Insight, Intimidate, Nature, Perception, Religion, Stealth, Streetwise, and Thievery. That's it. Thievery is like stuff like Open Lock, Disable Device, and a Sleight of Hand. So there's no craft skills, there's no profession skills. There's no... Alright, I'll see you later, Sam. Thanks for dropping in. I do appreciate that. Oh, why don't I have donations on? I don't know. I've never thought to turn them on. I've honestly never encountered a situation where someone wanted to give me donations. And I think for YouTube to turn on donations, I think you need to have, like, a certain level of, like, views and subscribers and stuff. Whatever. Yeah. There's a lot of non-combat stuff that's just left up to the imagination. Again, no profession skills, no crafting skills, no perform skills. Again, the combat is good. The inclusion of, like, the warlord, who gets a lot of, like, tactical abilities, is cool, but it's a very specific type of experience. 5th edition, from what I can tell, is really looking to substantially streamline the entire experience. That's pretty obvious in, like, the advantage system, which basically involves, instead of having all these little bonuses that stack onto each other, it's like, okay, in this situation, you either have advantage or disadvantage. Roll 2 20-sided die, and if you have advantage, you choose the one that's higher for your roll. If you have disadvantage, you take the one that's lower. Whereas before, like, let's say that you are trying to open up a lock or something, and you have, like, masterwork thieves tools and some special kind of gloves and some kind of special, like, knowledge about the lock in question. It's like, okay, so we're going to give you a +2 circumstantial bonus for the thieves tools. We're going to give you a +1 bonus for the... I don't know why gloves would make a difference, but let's say and give you a +1 bonus for the knowledge of the lock itself. Whereas in 5th edition, it's just like, okay, you have advantage because of these circumstances. You could still give them bonuses, or you could lower the difficulty class of the task or whatever, but it's kind of like get to the action, whether that's storytelling or combat action. That seems to be the vibe that I get off of 5th edition. Again, never read any of the books, never played 5th edition. It's hard to say, but that's actually a good question. I feel like 5e was really, really well received overall. There was, like, there's been a great gnashing of teeth basically every time anything has changed. I'm not super plugged into the D&D like fan base community as a whole. I know that there are some out there who see 3.5 as a real redheaded stepchild, because, and part of that is because that was when, or 3rd edition and 3.5, because that's when Wizards of the Coast came in. They bought up TSR's IP, which was D&D, and started publishing it. And people were like, oh, you know, this big publishing corporation, you know, we don't like them. We don't like the change. It's different and therefore wrong. 4th edition, I think there's a lot of legitimate criticism. I mean, there's a legitimate criticism about the sort of the occasional mechanical awkwardness of 3rd edition. You know, 4th edition, again, it's very focused on the combat. And there's like dumb stuff. Like there's a spell in 3rd edition called Knock. It's a really, really simple unlocking spell. It can unlock basically any kind of mundane lock with I think a single word. It just has like one activation phrase once the spell is prepared. So like you could be like in manacles and just be like blah and open it up. Knock is in 4th edition as a ritual that takes 10 fucking minutes to make it happen. You know, it's something that's supposed to be a really good like utility thing, and it turns into just whatever. Does your race affect your stats? And if so, what races get affected by what? Okay, yes. Humans are your base level dudes. They get like an extra. They get an extra feat. They get an extra like few points. Okay, actually, let me circle back to a point I wanted to make about skills and something that Pathfinder does that I really like a lot. So. I'd explained earlier that you can basically put a number of points into a skill equal to 3 plus your level, right? Which has this awkward situation where when you start off the game, when you have a level 1 character, you get a shit ton of extra skills, extra skill points, so that you can have like 4 ranks in a certain number of skills, and then continue to put an extra point into each of those as you level up. Now, you don't have to do that. You can distribute your skill points more judiciously, but generally it's meant to, like, let's say that you're a fighter. Fighters don't have a huge selection of skills because they're not a very skill-based class, whereas the rogue is. Same thing for, like, the bard. Where's the fighter at? Where are you? There you are. Okay, yeah. So, and there's a distinction made between class skills and non-class skills, where if you put points in non-class skills, you only get half a rank per point you put into non-class skills, and then you have skills that you can use untrained and skills that you can't use untrained. So, like, jump is a skill. It's an untrained skill, even if you never put a single point into jump. You can still, like, jump. It's not like you are unable to jump just because you don't have any points in it. It's just that you're not, like, trained. Whereas use magic device, for instance, that's a trained skill. You need special training as represented by putting points into it to actually use it. Same thing for open lock is a trained skill, decipher script is a trained skill, handle animals is a trained skill. You can't just like jump into these things without the ability. What is up, Richie Campos? What's the OMG for? Yeah, so like the fighter's class skills are climb, craft, handle animal, intimidate, jump, ride, and swim. Not a huge layout, but those are the things that like a professional warrior, which is what fighters represent. Like, and fighters aren't just like soldiers, they can be. But the majority of like NPC martial characters that you're going to run into are of the warrior class, which is different. There are 5 NPC classes in the game. Aristocrat, adept, which is like a minor spellcaster. Experts, those are like your crafts, like you're really capable like craftspeople and stuff. And yes, I know, I swear, it's not the most intellectual thing to do. But I do, and I do apologize. I do try to keep it to a minimum. And I know that like swearing is no longer cool with YouTube, that they're more, demonetizing, but I'm not monetized to begin with, so it doesn't really matter. Anyway. Yeah. Commoner, which is basically adept, expert, aristocrat, and warrior. So the majority of like guards, professional soldiers, those sorts of people, those are all going to be warriors. It's important to recognize that like player characters represent like the cream of the crop in terms of people in the world. Even a level 1 player character is already among like the most capable, talented, like top 2% in society. The majority of people in the world are commoners. And even a greater majority are some kind of NPC class. So, fighters are whatever. You get the idea. So, fighters, their skill points at first level is 2 plus their intelligence modifier times 4. Let's say that they have a 12 in intelligence. So that's going to be a plus 1 modifier. So that's 3 skill points times 4 at first level. So that's 12 in total. So you can put 4 points into 3 skills. And then at each subsequent level, you can put 1 point into each of those skills. So let's say that, like, okay, I'm going to do... I want to be a horse type guy. So, like, I want to be really good at riding my horse. So I'm going to put those points into handle animal and then ride, and I'm also going to put in climb because it's useful to be able to climb up stuff. And so at each subsequent level, you put 4 points into each of those at first level, and then an extra point into those each time you level up as that fighter. Pathfinder simplifies this by giving you a trained bonus where you get a +3 in any, like a +3 trained modifier to anything that you put a single point into. It simplifies things a lot, and I appreciate that. How would you players craft their items? Like, does a warrior spend time on armor? No, not typically. The majority of like your basic equipment you're just going to buy from shops. If you want to, if it's in your character's backstory, you can craft your own items. That might even be a slightly more inexpensive way of getting masterwork items, which are better versions of those items. For masterwork weapons, you get a +1 bonus to your attack roll, and I think masterwork armor, I don't think it gives you like an extra bonus to your AC. I think it's just lighter, which is important if you're tracking carrying weight. But yeah, how does your race affect your character? Was the original question that I was asking. So humans don't get any kind of ability bonuses because they're humans. They're boring like that. Dwarves get a +2 to their constitution and -2 to charisma, for instance. Half-orcs are big and strong. They're the only race that gets a bonus to their strength, but they take a hit to both intelligence and charisma as a result of that. And then you also have, like, racial abilities. So, like, elves, for instance, are immune to sleep magic. They get low light vision. And they are automatically able to detect the presence of secret doors in their immediate vicinity. And they also, like, you get, like, racial bonuses to traits, or not to traits, to skills. So elves get a +2 racial bonus on listen, search, and spot checks, whereas a half-orc gets a racial bonus to nothing? Really? They don't get any kind of racial bonus to skills. Okay. I would have sworn they got, like, a bonus to intimidate or something. Halflings, for instance, halflings get a +2 racial bonus on climb, jump, and move silently checks. Halflings are agile, sure-footed, and athletic. And it's also worth mentioning, I kind of forgot about this. Halflings get a +1 racial bonus to all saving throws. Halflings are surprisingly capable of avoiding mishaps. So yeah, that should answer the question about races and how that affects your character. I've probably got time for one more question here before we got to wrap up the stream. Let me know if this was cool. If y'all were into this, because I'd be happy to do this again sometime. I don't exactly know when. Maybe next Wednesday. I don't know. I'm currently technically on my my summer break, which is very, very short because I'm taking summer classes, and those start in a couple weeks. But anyway, launch one more question. I will try to answer that as succinctly as I can, and then I've got a freaking mess to clean up of books and such. But this was super fun. I enjoyed this a great deal. The big exception to crafting items is magical items. You can buy magical items, but there's a whole world of feats dedicated to crafting, you know, everything from wands to wondrous items, which are their own class of, like, weird catch-all magic stuff. I'd like to know what other things take up real time in the game a noob might not know about. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, resting is really important. All spellcasters need to get 8 hours of sleep every night for their spells to reset. So, like, you have to worry about that. For, like, if you're camping out in the wilderness, it's a really good idea to set up watch. You need to make sure that the spellcasters are on either the front end or the back end of watch so that they can sleep for their full 8 hours. Travel time is huge. It takes a long time to get from place to place depending upon what you're doing, and there's rules for how quickly you can move. Like, there's rules for moving in combat, right? Where most, like, small characters, so gnomes and halflings and dwarves are treated as medium characters, but they have a reduced their base speed is 20. Medium characters, their base speed is 30. So humans, elves, half elves, and half orcs. But like it's different between running around in combat versus like the amount of distance you travel like on the road. It's different depending upon how much weight you're carrying, if you're riding a horse versus not, or riding a dog for that matter. Let's see here. Do you actually have to make camp? Yes, it is a good idea to make camp. That's something that I think is pretty valuable. Player's Handbook has a bunch of equipment that relates to camping. So like tents and bedrolls are items that you need to buy. It's not in this, but in, I think it's there's a big equipment book for Pathfinder that includes things like mess kits, which I think is really neat. It's a neat little detail. Crafting food for health. So this is actually a really good thing to mention. Healing from wounds through natural means takes a while. So every character has a hit die number. That is the number of dice that they've had to roll to determine their number of hit points. Basically, your hit die corresponds to your level. Because you roll for more health every time you level up. So when you are like in town, for instance, you're resting normally. You're still getting up, you're doing stuff in town, but you're like getting a full 8 hours of sleep every night. When you rest normally, you gain back it's essentially your level in hit points every night, every day of regular rest, which obviously that can take a while. If you're resting for the whole day, which is to say, if you're doing like a full rest, so minimal activity other than just recovering, I was gonna show y'all Otto, but he skedaddled too quickly. Hello, little doodle. Have you come to say hello to the streaming audience? Look at this little dude. Say hello, Otto. He's not one for the spotlight. Anyway. But yeah, if you're doing like a full rest, you double that number. So if you're a level 2 character, you'll heal 4 hit points every day of full rest. So like in between adventures, you might spend like a week in town to recover from your wounds. And that's, I mean, hit points are a super fucking nebulous thing, right? Oh, he shot me right through the hit points. What does that exactly mean? A DM might take more, like, specificity and, like, I mean, you could take, like, a RimWorld approach to it where you're damaging, like, individual parts of your body that need mending. There's also healing spells that clerics get access to that can speed that process up. And crafting items in general takes a fairly long time. I think, let me see here. Let's say you wanted to make, I don't know. What is it, little dude? Let's say that you wanted to make, like, what's a good example? Like a rod of cancellation, for instance. Rods are weird items to begin with, but like a rod of cancellation, the cost of that, cost to create that, is... I guess that would be... Because the price is 11,000, the cost of creation is half of the market price. So that would be... I'm completely blank on it. It would be 5,500 gold in materials, and you'd have to basically take 5.5 days to make it. It's the number of days required to create magical items is 1 day per 1,000 gold of material put into it, and that would go for wands, staves, rings, whatever. So item crafting is another big thing that is something that can take up a fair amount of real world time. Cooking food is not one of those things. Like there, I mean, you can. I think it's a profession. It's a skill. It's a thing within the profession skill. Hold on, let me see here. Yeah. Profession. You are trained in a livelihood or professional role, such as apothecary, boater, bookkeeper, brewer, cook, driver, farmer, fisher, guide, herbalist, herder, hunter, innkeep, lumberjack, miller, miner, porter, rancher, sailor, scribe, siege engineer, stable hand, tanner, teamster, woodcutter, or the like. So yeah, if you were going to use, oh, I do have 10 minutes left. It's I'm gonna get off soon. Yeah. For like, it's, you could cook if you are a character who is trained as a cook. You could, you know, go out and do like a little survival check or a little knowledge nature check to gather up materials. If you have a ranged weapon, you'd probably roll some kind of general skill check to determine how much like game you could bring back, and then roll like a profession cook check and cook the food. But generally, like, the majority of food that you're going to have is in the form of rations, at least on the road, and then there's like in fare as well. Food is one of those things that, like, I as a player like to track. I like to track how many rations I'm consuming, spend my gold on that appropriately. But as a DM, it's one of those things that can add a nice little bit of like mindful realism, but can be annoying if you're really, really harping on and on about it. So, it's one of those things where if the players are interested in tracking it, I will keep track of it, but if not, I won't. But anyway, that I think is going to have to do it, folks. Again, do let me know if this is something that you want me to get into on another stream. Make sure to come back here. Basically, same great time, or same great place, slightly different time tomorrow, 3:30 to 5:30 as per usual. For me and Sam, we're going to be streaming more Don't Starve together. That should be fun. Let me know what y'all thought of this in chat or in comments. If you know me personally, you can text me. I'll consider doing this another time. But from me and all of these frickin' books, I am Ned Finn. Thank you all very much for watching. I really appreciate the audience. Yeah, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you're not currently subscribed. I'm glad I keep popping up. Thank you all very much for watching. I am Ned Finn, and goodbye.